We know that our business, our communities, our world will thrive only if nature is respected.
Nature is critical for solving many of the challenges we face. It can capture and sequester, protect biodiversity, produce food, and sustain life.
Businesses need to value how important nature is to them and to society, not only to mitigate their impacts and risks, but also to uncover their dependencies on nature itself.
Businesses have a vital role to play. They determine the way in which economies evolve. They provide an opportunity for consumers to be involved in shaping their future. They are connected with billions of people. If businesses could put nature and nature-based solutions at the center of all their decision-making, they could have a profound impact on the prospects for our world being secure for generations to come.
Our commitment to nurturing our planet starts in the field. We're committed to improving soil health and biodiversity.
We are trying to help produce more food, feed, and fiber to feed a growing population, but with a fraction of the resources that we are currently using.
An important area for us to lead in as business is to commit to the endorsement and implementation of science-based targets for nature to be developed.
Kellogg is investing in nature.
Walmart is investing in nature.
Newforce is investing in nature.
Olam is investing in nature.
Stora Enso is investing in nature because it's good for climate and the society.
Rabobank is investing in nature because it's good for society, climate and food security.
Syngenta is investing in nature because it's absolutely critical to the future of the world.
When it comes to taking better care of the planet, we're in this together.
We're seeing extraordinary actions being taken by CEOs everywhere, and governments listen to business leaders.
We need political leadership to scale investment in natural climate solutions today.
We believe that policy frameworks would attract more capital into both forest production and conservation.
To ensure we are going in the right way, we have to work together. That's why the Paris Agreement is a good step in the right direction.
We as business are going to really rely on governments to set the types of policy mechanisms into place that channel funding into nature-based solutions.
To every business leader everywhere, put nature centrally into all your decision-making, because without business, the world cannot move forward.
The solutions are ready. The finance is there. All we need to do is act today.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming back. We've heard political leaders and business leaders. We're all on the same page here, and we've been talking about moving from ambition to action. So here we are. The next panel is going to tell us about actual business solutions. So it's going to be fun. I'm going to invite 4 people to our panel. Mr. Christian Heller, BASF, and the CEO of Values Balancing Alliance, please come up. Mr. Jan-Willem Straatsma, Sustainable Livestock Farming Manager at Friesland Campina. Mr. Vilem Ferwerda, CEO and founder of Commonland. And then finally, Mr. Gautier Quéru, Director of Land Degradation Neutrality Fund at Mirova. Welcome to the stage. Okay, we're going to do things a little bit differently today. So yes, there will be 4 times 10 minutes of presentation. But these guys have an additional challenge, which is this. You're going to have to listen really carefully to everything they say, because afterwards I'm going to ask all of you in the audience 2 questions. Number 1, and for you in the front, number one, thank you. Which is most exciting? And number 2, which of these business solutions is the most tangible and will have the most positive impact on nature? Okay? So they each have 10 minutes, which I think is quite a long time. They're not going to get a second more. I'm going to be super strict. I'm going to make them uncomfortable as I walk closer to them while they approach the deadline. So you've got to start with what's most important first, okay? All right, so you all set with that? We're going to have 4 presentations of what business is actually doing in very many different ways. And to kick us off is my dear friend Christian. Christian Heller, the floor is yours.
Is that working? Yep, running. Okay. Thanks, Eva. 10 minutes?
10 minutes on the clock.
Do I get a discount if I make it in 9?
No, but you get you get penalized if you go over.
Good. So, welcome from my end. Thanks for the invitation to present here what we are currently doing. Entering this room today in the morning, I heard lots of stuff. Yes, we should do, we could do. We're talking about this stuff. It's really time about action. And I'm really calling about the business leaders or the business representatives and the finance representatives here in the room. We have a responsibility to change. And change means we should not just communicate, report, do whatever kind of fancy brochures or stuff like this. We really need to get this done in decision-making and steering. So Tom mentioned this in the morning. It's about accounting. It's about really getting sustainability thinking and strategies into our key decision processes. In the end, we are talking about incentive schemes for businesses, not just internally as well as externally. In the end, we are talking, at least for public listed companies, about how do we shape our dividends in a new way and how do we get rewarded for additional kinds of dividends. So this is the mindset of a group of, let's say, partners who have started to join forces in what we call the Value Balancing Alliance. And actually, I like to start with this picture because this, in the end, is somehow demonstrating the world we're currently in. But you need to be aware of, we as this alliance, we will not question at all global capitalism. We are quite behind that this is, in the end, the most or the best system to create innovation and to create wealth for people. But we need to think about how do we channel and control the powers of capitalism globally. And this is what we are about. So there's a new word in the room which is called impact. Many of you are using this. What we are trying to do is to think about the impacts we as businesses are causing and how do we get these really into our business decision-making schemes. If you're looking at this big slide over here, we are all aware that, yes, companies are reporting about, let's take the CO2 emissions because it's the most prominent example. But I'm a representative of BASF as well. If I'm going to tell you we are emitting 22 million tons of CO2 every year, what does this tell you? A few people in the room understand what this means, but if I'm telling this to my CEO, he says, okay, and now I can't smell it, I can't see it, it doesn't cost any money, so why should I care? What we are heading for, and this is a nice notion Valentin brought up today, is how can you make the costs or the impacts visible? And this for business is the language of money. So we're talking about monetization. What you need to take into account is, if I say we are emitting 22 million tons of CO2, what is the effect on climate change? And what is the effect of climate change on people? So you get a totally new perspective on how you're valuing business performance. It's not anymore the profits we are looking at. It's the well-being of people we try to put as yardstick to assess business performance. And we try to value this. So we are talking about a monetary price for carbon as well as for all of the other environmental impacts what we are causing. This is the picture of BASF. There are many others out there. This is telling you in the end in monetary figures the impacts BASF is causing along the value chain. We are talking about positive and negative value drivers. But we are quite keen about always to say, don't just look at one indicator. If you're steering your business along profits, you're not providing value to society. If you're steering your business along greenhouse gases alone, you will not provide value to society. You need to think about the complete picture as far as you can to make a comprehensive assessment. To understand where we are coming from as BASF, BASF implemented back in 2011 a company purpose saying we create chemistry for a sustainable future. Still we know how we create chemistry, still we don't know what a sustainable future is, but the question from the board of directors was, can we somehow assess, demonstrate, measure, value this contribution we make. And we came up with this model, which is based in welfare economics. This is couched in all of these new concepts called impact measurement and valuation, which have been driven mainly by caring. I hope they are in the room. So they get the credit for this based on the environmental P&L. We just try to move this a little bit further to make this as complex and as comprehensive as possible, in the end taking human and social capitals into account as well in a complete picture. Why are we doing this as businesses? We have really in self-interest in doing so. So if you're looking over the last 2 to 3 years, especially in Europe with the hot summers, climate change is directly impacting our financial bottom lines. And now we're not talking anymore since 2 decades about climate change. Now we really feel it in practice. So there is a business interest to assess externalities. And how are we doing this? We put a monetary price tag on the costs we are creating potentially. The challenge what we have is that we have currently around close to 1,000 companies around the world who are piloting similar concepts within the companies at different scale. But the pictures are looking like this. And let's say now I'm a mainstream investor of one of these companies and I want to assess one company to the next, what should I do? There's no way of comparing results. And this is the challenge why this stuff is not really integrated as of today. So there's a bunch of companies now sitting together with 4 main objectives. First of all, we are going to standardize all impact measurement and valuation techniques and methodologies which are currently used in the market. The second one is we will design a disclosure frame so that you as our stakeholders can easily compare the results. We will make everything publicly available, most probably via the OECD. And the most interesting part is that all companies signing up to this are committed to pilot this in internal decision-making and steering. We can't do this alone. So the interesting part for you, it's the first time that these 4 nice organizations are working together on a global scale. We have quite some people behind. Most of them are already in the room, initiatives we are starting to collaborate with. In the end, come to this final picture. What we like to achieve is that you get a replacement of your financial accounts in your corporate reporting. You replace it with, you could call an integrated value statement, however this will be called later on, including natural, social, and human capital along financial capitals in monetary terms. So it makes its way directly into financial accounting, including incentive schemes, including cash flows, including dividends in the end. We hope to get this done rather sooner than later. So our timeline in the end is within the next 3 years we have set up this model. We have piloted that stuff. We have a disclosure frame in place. And my personal target is out of this at least 10 companies which are now engaged, at least 5 of the CEOs of them will stand in front of their annual shareholder meetings in 2022 stating, this is the total value I create as a company. And it's consisting of X, Y, Z. And I'm not talking anymore just about my financial contribution. The interesting question is, why are companies buying into this journey? There are 3 main, or let's say there are 4 reasons. If you're thinking back, SAP is in and there are 4 auditing firms in. Yes, for some of them it's really a business model. This is more than fine. This is how we are driving stuff. For the others, it's 3 main reasons. First of all, there's no company in the world as of today who really knows how to manage multi-capital KPIs. So if I have a trade-off between profits and greenhouse gases, how should I handle this? We hope at least to create the transparency to provide solutions. The second one is, yes, I'm close to 9 minutes. The second one is really, yes, we need to change our business models. And this is the way to do so. And the most personal reason is all of these guys were saying in the end, I will be questioned by my kids. Mommy, Daddy, you have been in such an influential position. What have you done? And for us as businesses, we should be aware our current behavior is shaping the perception of the younger generations over the next 20 to 30 years, what they think about business. So if we are not moving and fundamentally moving, we will be challenged and we will not continue as we do today. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. Spot on time. And next up, without further ado, we have Jan-Willem Straatsma. 10 minutes on your side. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Jan-Willem Straatsma. I'm working for a big cooperative dairy company, Friesland Campina. For myself, I'm a son of a member dairy farmer from Friesland Campina. I'm a member of the Global Sustainability team of Friesland Campina. And we are working not only on climate, energy, but also on biodiversity, on regenerative farming. We are doing projects with other big companies in Holland on that theme. So that is very important. How are we transforming into a bio-based and circular economy? Because we know 55% we can do with the climate agreements when we are doing the right things, but we need also on the circle economy doing the right things with raw materials, with clothing, nutrient cycles, and so on. I think what we are doing from Friesland Campina, very typical, is our approach, because we are a cooperative. So you can say that when we are working together with 80,000 member farmers of Friesland Campina, because they own the company of Friesland Campina, and we have also members in Germany and in Belgium. And when you look at the surveys we are working on, then about 30% of the surface of the Netherlands is in use by member farmers of Friesland Campina, so we can have a very big impact when we are doing the right things with the biodiversity monitor. So we can measure, we can act, and we can monitor on how a member farming is doing his work also with the soils and with energy and with climate and so on, and that is very important. We have not only very good products from Friesland Campina, dairy products, but it is also very important for us that we are helping farmers, but also other stakeholders, how are we making a new business ecosystem so that in the very long run we can produce food, and we have to do that on the right way. And I have also a little example of shifting the business model within Friesland Campina. And I think we have really an impact not only in the western part of Europe, but we are also working in Asia, Africa, in other continents. And what the biggest challenge for Friesland Campina is, how can we make very healthy products with as less environmental impact? So we need to seek the balance and not a conflict. So we are working together not only with farmers, but also with NGOs, with governments, with universities, with a lot of stakeholders. How can we create with each other the right balance? And products out of milk, the people from Asia, other continents, they want to have highly intense products of milk, but we have also to care for the environmental impacts. So the balance, that is very important. So milk is a very high nutrition dense product, but how can we make it carbon neutral? And then we have not only to work on climate, energy, but also on biodiversity. And we, as Friesland Campina, because we can control the total chain from grass to glass. We can work together not only with our 80,000 farmers, but also with other businesses such as Danone, Nestlé, Unilever. And when we are cooperating in the total value chain, then we can create with each other the right innovations on sustainability. And then we are looking not only at biodiversity and on clean water and on energy and on animal health and welfare, but also on better nutrition and how are we dealing with the ecosystem. And our member farmers, for example, not only in Holland, but also in Germany, but also the member farmers that are member farmers, but farmers in China, Nigeria, India. We have there a big program how we can develop also the chains over there. I think we have a lot of knowledge how we can that better build up with each other. So that is our cooperative way of working in sustainability. And we are doing that with a lot of partners. We are doing that, for example, in the International Dairy Federation, so also with Fonterra and with Arla all over the world. But we are also busy with the Sustainable Dairy Framework. So how can we use the same language and instruments so we can talk with each other about the right things? So cooperative sustainability, very important is that we can also measure and act and monitor. And that is what we are doing on a lot of programs we are already driving on within Friesland Campina, not only on farm level, but also on supply chain level. And as I mentioned, also with the consumer and business-to-business partners, and we are also working together with governments. And an example is the biodiversity monitor. And I want to talk something about that, because when you look at biodiversity, then we have to improve that on farm level. So we have to look at not only the plants and the riches of soils, but also to the insects, birds, and so on. And that we can do alone as Friesland Campina. So we have there to work together with a lot of parties. And we did that in Holland with the World Wildlife Fund, the Rabobank, so a banking company, also with 3 big groups of dairy farmers in the north of Holland, and we worked together. That was not an easy job. Sometimes it didn't work very well, but we worked together for 2 years, and we agreed on how can we measure and monitor on farm level niveau, and how can we integrate our approach with other organizations and also with the farmers. And for the farmers, when we are doing the right things on the themes on sustainability, and they can also monitor, we can also give a higher milk price to the farmers. So there is also an incentive which is very helpful for the farmer. And then the farmer will do more. And when we can work together, for example, with other companies on water or with governments, then we can, when we are producing on landscape, on nature, the right things, we can also give the farmer, organize for the farmer, new financial incentives. And that is very important, that we not only are monitoring, but that we also are rewarding the right things at farm level for the farmers. And that is a continuous process of learning. So we are at this moment with 4,000 farmers in Holland. They are making from a new business model, because you have also to shift your business model. The top 10% of the farmers, they are with integrated farming very busy on nature, landscape, and on animal welfare. And then you can also make a big loop in the market. So we have to connect the farmer and the landscape with our value chain and with the markets. And then we can help each other very well, I think. Another big program, but is also running, that is how can we make the total chain energy neutral. I gave the example of shifting the business model for Friesland Campina, how we are shifting the business model with a lot of other cooperatives. It's a very big challenge, but we are working on that. And we are also working together on that with other big companies like Danone, Nestlé, so that we are doing not only in Holland, Germany, and Belgium, but also in other regions, the right things. And I think surely at pre-competitive phases, then we can learn a lot of each other, and that is also very important because we are a big company, but we can't do this alone. So we have to work together with NGOs, with governments, with research institutions, with the farmers, and then we can make a big change.
Perfect, thank you. Brilliant, right on time. Thank you so much. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Willem Ferwerda, who's the CEO and founder of Commonland. Thank you.
Let's see. Yes, hello. Muchas gracias para la invitación para la gente que habla en español. Thank you very much for being here. And I'm also sometimes speak a little bit Spanish because we also work in Spain.
Ah, so just we should put on our headsets,
only at the end.
Okay.
So my background is I'm a tropical ecologist, has been working for many years with IUCN in the conservation community, but I started as an entrepreneur in business and tourism business and was one of the co-founders of one of the largest ecotourism companies in the Netherlands. So I've been always working abroad and left IUCN 6-7 years ago to start Commonland, basically to look for a holistic landscape model with a bottom-up approach. Because what we actually need is a new language and a new framework to restore global ecosystems. We need to go into a transformative mode, and not only business, but also investors, governments, farmers, land users, and consumers. But that's pretty tough. And there are actually only 2 projects in the world where you have a massive landscape restoration project. One is in China, you see it here, and one is in the US. In the US, it was because before the war, the government said unemployed people need to plant trees in the East Coast. And in China, you have only one landowner, and that makes it pretty easy. So they could restore the Lus Plateau of more than 35 million hectares. And they already did 3.5 million hectares, the size of Belgium. They started in 1994. But how to create such a holistic land or ecosystem restoration framework, and how to create a language that everyone would understand, and then of course how to do it. That was an enormous challenge, and I took up that challenge in a sabbatical in 2012 when I left the IUCN community, although I'm still connected to the Commission on Ecosystem Management of that community, and I'm also connected to the Rotterdam School of Management, a business school in the Netherlands. It should be inclusive, systemic, and long-term. It should be about moving away from a siloistic ego with a G, towards a more inclusive social ecosystem. And it should all about bringing the communities in those abandoned landscapes back to life again, but with a business case. And that's a tough thing, because what could the role of business be? Because this is our current belief system. This is our economic belief system. I have framed it into one sentence: maximizing financial returns or return on investment per hectare. As at the business school in Rotterdam, it's all about maximizing return on investment. But if you add these 2 words, per hectare, you create biodiversity loss, you create a loss of purpose of people living in those landscapes, degraded landscapes, and you create actually disaster. And we know all about it, so we will not go into that anymore in detail, because books are written about it. And as an ecologist and as normal people, we know that we need to shift away from this economic belief system that's there now for more than 250 years. So how? First, what we did, we looked into what is happening on the ground and framed that into a simple language that everyone could understand. And if you look on the ground and you visit farmers and you visit investors and you visit people working in conservation, you realize that in all those degraded areas, you have 4 losses. You have a loss of hope, purpose. People are migrating to the cities. You have a loss of employment because you have a loss of economic activities. Monocultures means less work for less people than if you have smallholders, families, farmers. And of course, you have the ultimate loss of biodiversity, healthy soils, water retention, and you name it. So what if you change and transform these 4 losses in multiple return setting, but not 1,000 returns into 1,000 ecosystem zoning approach, but no, let's say 4 returns. You need to bring back the inspiration, which is actually the key factor of anything. And you ask marketeers, and they know exactly what you do, what you mean by it. You need to bring back jobs. You need to bring back the biodiversity. And you need to create a sustainable financial investment portfolio where you bring down risks and increase cash flows and long-term financial gain. So we call that the 4 returns framework. But the 4 returns framework will not work if it does not land on the ground. And as an ecologist raised in landscapes and always studying the interaction on the agricultural frontier between native, let's say indigenous, primary natural systems and converted systems, I thought it is about basically 3 zones that we need to understand. In each large area, you have an economic zone, a zone of infrastructure, businesses, machinery, where people live. And you have a natural zone. Quite often those natural zones are Natura 2000 in Europe or protected areas. But there's not much about, there's almost not a combined zone, a zone where you increase biodiversity through regenerative agroforestry systems and increase productivity and bring down costs and bring down risks. So here climate comes in as well. So in each area you can identify where those 3 zones are. The last component of this methodology is years, time. It does not make sense to talk about projects. We need to talk about areas, and we need to talk about an implementation period of minimum 20 years or 1 generation. And people understand that. A tree does not grow faster if you pour money over it. So we started in 2013 just by doing it and founded Commonland, a non-profit foundation with a profit entity under it. So we could act in different ambiances. And we started in 4 landscapes, in Spain, South Africa, West Australia, and the Netherlands. We built teams, and those areas are big, over 100,000 hectares, and even in Spain we are talking about 1 million hectares, with the main driver almonds. I will come back to that. In Australia we were able, within 4 years, to create a regenerative company and bring it to the Australian Stock Exchange. It was a milestone to translate 4 returns, a holistic approach, into a commercial arena. And people bought into it, and the share is still up and quite going well. But most important, the shareholders are farmers. They're fed up with the monocultural degradation system, and they want to survive. And they already have food products, they call it dirty clean food, so the things are going well. And meanwhile, we're working in Australia, West Australia, to create a whole movement around regen ag and a holistic landscape approach. But let's go to Spain. Vamos a España. In Spain, we work in 1 million hectare area. Something goes wrong here, sorry. Okay, here it is, 1 million hectares in Spain. We set up a landscape restoration partnership, now with more than 300 farmers, and the chairman, Alfonso Chico de Guzman, is here with us as well. Working in this 1 million hectares, we identified the zoning approach. We set up companies. The first company was the almond company, Regenerative Almond Company, and with grants and commercial money, we are moving this process into the zoning approach. And we only are there now for 5 years. We still have 15 years to go, and the movement is growing. So what is the next step here? We foresee that we can create 50 companies in this area. And then we are talking business. We are talking investment portfolio. We can talk €1 billion on commercial and blended finance, grants from governments as well. So how does that work? Together with KPMG, what we did is we created a kind of true value bridge, where you can see the impact per one of those 4 returns and see what the risk and the cash flow are. And of course, this is just a first view of a table. We can monitor and measure all these things with our local teams. And we can also now show what's in it for the government, what's in it for the investor, what's in it for the corporate, for the company, what's in it for the farmers, and what's in it for, let's say, nature conservation areas or protected area managers. We identify these different groups through this returns portfolio, and we tick boxes of SDGs as well, while including carbon. Carbon will be, of course, one of the main drivers, although it's still pretty unstable. So how to continue? What we foresee is that from the bottom-up approach, you need global landscape funds. And these funds need a motor, a facilitation process. The yellow line probably is 1% of the total funding for this whole area. If we talk about Spain, for the 1 million hectares, we might need €1 billion, and only 1% is needed to drive this process. That's the yellow line, to facilitate the process. So, conclusion. Our learnings, and there are many more, but I have only limited time. We see that this is working, the 4 returns framework. Have now a proof of concept in 4 countries and working in 8 countries already, together with entities like Red Cross, the UN Decade, World Resources Institute, WWF and others, the Nature Conservancy. We also see that this value bridge gives insights of risk and returns to investors, governments, business, and land users. We also have an understanding of how we can create a kind of governance fund structure at a regional level. And we know the cost to do that, which is basically a 1% or 500K per year to make sure that we drive this process at the local level. And when we can access investors, governments, and companies, I'm sure that we can accelerate this restoration process. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Oh yes, please hand it over. And so amazing examples so far. We have one more in the competition. It's my great pleasure to introduce Mr. Gautier Quéru then from Mirova. So the last one, listen carefully.
Hello everyone. I'm Gautier Quéru. I'm the director for the Land Degradation Neutrality Fund at Mirova. And so I'll try to present you financial solutions to biodiversity and natural capital. Really, in a nutshell, just for you to know what Mirova is, we're a private sector company, a financial company, management company, part of a big banking group in France, which is BPCE, second largest banking group, so I would say mainstream finance. But within this group, we are a subsidiary fully dedicated to sustainable development, and namely to the SDGs, the Paris Agreement, and hopefully next year, the Kunming Agreement as well. And our role is really to mobilize capital, mostly from private institutional investors, towards the financing of sustainable development and the transformation of the economy in this regard. There are 5 areas of expertise: listed equities, green bonds, social impact, renewable energy, and natural capital. I will comment further on. 100 experts, so that's small but high in the field of finance towards the sustainable aspects. 4 offices, not only in Paris, which is our headquarters, but also Luxembourg, London, and Boston in the US. So the US are still interested in sustainability despite recent announcements. And in terms of amounts, we're now speaking of billions, which is encouraging. A few years ago, we were speaking of hundreds of millions. Many years ago, just millions. But so the trillions may be coming, but the millions are really there. And just to let you know, Natixis Group is managing $1,000 billion, which is huge. And our role is really to increase our share in that space so that, there is more and more capital towards sustainability. So now biodiversity, natural capital, how do we integrate that? For us, it's definitely the new frontier, given the political momentum, the action agenda that we want to support. Almost 20 years ago, we supported the renewable energy finance, which was really nascent by then. Afterwards, carbon finance, 15 years ago. Then the green bond market 10 years ago. And for the last 5 years, we have really been working on natural capital as a new investment territory. And to integrate biodiversity in our investment strategy, we have two main legs. The first is integrating biodiversity criteria into all portfolios, be they listed equities, bonds, and any other form of investment of companies. And we are involved in many initiatives, and Act for Nature in France. We're working with CDC Biodiversity as well to measure the contribution and the impact on biodiversity, and willing to support this on portfolio levels. But it's not only about integrating these indicators in portfolio, it's also about directly financing protection and restoration of biodiversity. And if you make a quick comparison with the renewable energy and the carbon space, we need to measure the carbon footprint of the portfolios, but we also need to finance renewable energy and energy efficiency projects. And for biodiversity and natural capital, it is the same. So I'm really specializing in the second leg, so this is what I will talk about. So financing direct conservation and nature protection project. This is what we are doing with a natural capital investment platform we have built already a few years ago. And we have now $400 million under management, so dedicated to financing restoration of nature, through especially the Althelia funds. Mirova, we purchased Althelia, that was an independent small managers, and recently we announced that we had full integration of Althelia funds within Mirova. So it means we have a range of funds that are addressing different needs, either land restoration that I will talk about later, protection of forest, protection of ocean resources with Sustainable Ocean Fund, a specific focus on biodiversity also with the recently announced Althelia Biodiversity Fund in Brazil, and more funds to come because we are really here to provide the solutions needed on the ground in different regions and different sectors. And what is very important is that we have put together a team of more than 20 experts, including finance experts, but also conservation experts, biology experts, agronomy experts. This is what is needed, the effort needed to also find better solutions to address the needs on the ground. And I think part of the effort is also putting together the right experts. And the objective is really to put the same level of robustness in our processes, I would say rational approach that we developed in renewable energy, so that investment in land restoration, in nature protection becomes tangible, understandable, and reliable for investors, of course, with multiple benefits. I mean, this is at the least the ambition. So I will just now focus on the Land Degradation Neutrality Fund that I know well because I manage it and can let you a bit more. This is so part of the fund we developed, and we started 4 years ago, with the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, the third Rio Convention alongside the climate one and the biodiversity one. And they wanted to set up immediately a public-private fund to finance land restoration and sustainable land management project. And Mirova was selected following a tender. And we were very happy to be selected, but we had also to define a robust framework to avoid risk. So it's about putting the right standards in place, environmental and social standards, putting the right methodology, and also being able to ensure that what we finance has strong impact. So we had to develop also an important impact reporting framework. And the objective was then, within that framework, to contributing to fighting land degradation and restoration of ecosystem, to find viable business model and providing them with much needed long-term finance. I mean, it takes time for trees to grow, for nature to restore, so patient capital is what is needed. And this is what it was missing in the market. And this is what we are trying to do with this fund, long-term loans to operators on the ground that restore land, that put in place sustainable land management that are good for biodiversity. And because this is new, in order to attract more private investors, the UN said you need also private capital to de-risk a bit the private investor and pave the way for more investment. And so we succeeded after a few years of efforts. It has not been an easy journey, but the fund is now fully operational. We announced recently $150 million of commitment from initially public investors, the European Investment Bank and the French Development Agency, who were the initial sponsors, but that have been able to help us attract mainstream private investors, and I'm speaking of large insurance companies like Allianz or BNP Paribas Cardiff, and pension funds. We have a Canadian pension fund, for instance, Fond Action. They are willing to contribute to the SDGs, and they decided to join us. And also, speaking of concrete actions and solutions, we were able also to analyze more than 200 projects, which is already a lot of work, and identify the risk-return profile. I mean, the impacts on the one hand, and also the robustness from an economic standpoint. And it was really very interesting to discover many activities that are emerging everywhere in the world in agroforestry, agroecology, regenerative agriculture, sustainable forestry. There are many activities developed around the world, Latin America, Africa, Asia, and a great network of partners we could connect. NGOs, especially conservation NGOs, have been promoting good solutions on the ground for many years, and we can now scale up what they initiated. SMEs that are also emerging, specializing in restoration economy. Local banks involved in this aspect as well. Aggregators, project developers, and also corporations that are willing to have more sustainable supply chains. And so, in order to give also concrete example and to have pictures not as nice as the one from Willem, but nice still, what the type of project we are supporting. First example is a landscape restoration project in Peru, where there have been deforestation for many years, and a project operator called Ecotierra is working with cooperatives of smallholder to develop agroforestry system. We're speaking of organic and fair trade certified coffee plantation with smallholders. And in a way that it uses the strength in the market, which is strong demand for this certified coffee, specialty coffee, that is for which demand is growing, and to finance this really restoration of land using the revenues from the sales of coffee, from the processing, from the certification, that put together can really make an economically viable project. We're also working with a project in Bhutan that is developing the hazelnut supply chain to restore degraded land and develop sustainable orchard with smallholders and provide, especially for the Chinese market, this much needed sustainably produced hazelnuts. We have other projects in small forestry in Kenya or also in Indonesia, for instance, a mix of cocoa and peanuts production. And each time it is a project developer, innovative project developer, working with smallholders and generating impact, but also attractive financial returns because of the booming activities, the booming development of sustainable supply chain. Just in a nutshell to conclude, we have a strong ambition, but we need to be careful. There is a real potential to build an asset class as robust as the renewable energy. It took 10 years, 15 years for renewable energy to become mainstream. This is what we're trying to achieve for natural capital. There are proven agronomic solutions. There is strong market demand, and we need to make all the operators and the developers more robust to develop a truly genuine restoration economy. I think it's really, in terms of transformation, what we need to achieve. This requires a transition phase where public and private capital still needs to be mixed, given the lack of track record, but with more coordination, better understanding of all the actors, and also convergence in terms of impact reporting and standards, we can really, through coalitions of actors, help build this asset class and achieve most part of the objective that we would need to get for after the Kunming conference. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you to all our speakers. There's nothing like getting business and finance people together with a challenge, with a deadline of 10 minutes, and then putting on the competitive edge. I think these presentations demonstrate an amazingly high quality, inspirational, innovative approaches that it's going to be really hard for all of you in the audience now with the 2 tasks, the 2 voting we're going to do. So, afterwards we will come to clarifying questions and additional questions even between yourselves, but to keep it fair, they've each had 10 minutes. If we can launch Slido, please. So we had Gautier Quéru with the investing in land degradation neutrality. We had, are you all, do people need to go back on Slido? Is everyone, do you need the login details? Or you're okay? We've got 22 voting. We're not seeing the, oh, it's suspense, is it? It's only at the end we see the results? All right. So the range of examples I was just saying is pretty impressive, from the mainstream financial investment with the natural capital impact angle. We've got Christian with accounting for natural capital, but also social and human capital in the way companies' performance is measured. And then we had some very land-based, so we've got Jan-Willem with down to earth with the farmers and saying, will we pay you more for your milk because you have a positive impact? And then finally, Vilem with this true value of land and actually finding a model to reward that. So the first question is, which one was most exciting? The second question will be which one is most tangible and has the most positive impact on nature. So let's go for most exciting. Which one, when you heard it, you thought, wow, that sounds really cool? Obviously, they all sounded incredibly excited by their work, some more than others, but we have an issue with this, do we, or no? Philips didn't show up, so that's the rule of the game. Philips actually did an environmental profit and loss account, and they were going to share, unfortunately, couldn't be with us today. They've gone. There we go. Winners and losers, off the list. Is this working? Can we, 61 people? Here we are. Commonland, ooh. Aha. Okay, exciting. If we can stay on this one, that's great. Okay, we have, BASF, Commonland, here we go. It's pretty tight. Those top 3, BASF. Okay, let's see. Can we get to 120? We're going to get to 120 people having voted. We're on 114 now. 6 more votes. Let's go. Commonland. Ooh, it's close. BASF, catching up. No. All right. Commonland. Is it going to be Commonland? And it's a home run for Commonland. Congratulations. The second question is also really important, which is, which one do you believe will have the most tangible and positive impact on nature? Is Commonland still going to be in the lead? That's interesting. Haha. All right, I'm not making any comments to influence you. Mirova's coming up on this one. Mirova's catching up. We're on about a third here. Commonland's nearly got half the votes. I'm going to ask you all to comment on this, by the way, afterwards. Okay. Don't tell me it's a home run for Commonland again. All right. Round of applause. Well done. Well done. And what you get from me is absolutely nothing. So now I would welcome comments from the floor, in reactions, additions, and then we're going to get some comments from people in the room. So please, go ahead.
My comment is that competition is not good.
Thank you.
We should talk about collaboration.
Thank you. Do you want to expand on that? There was a sort of underlying reason for this exercise in particular, so I'm happy you raised that.
And the tough thing is that we need to move out from a competitive world into a transformation process towards to a collaborative world. And that's tough for everybody, because look at these 4 gentlemen. We all love competition, I'm sure, because we're men. So we're the women here. But I think it is the thing that's a transformation. So I think that is the real challenge we need to face, because if we don't collaborate, we will all lose.
Yeah.
That's the stuff.
That's a core question, and I just want to add, I think everyone agrees about this, but let's go one. It's really hard, as you said, and from your experience, you've managed to get all these people together. Do you have any advice on how to get past that competitive state of mind?
Yes, my advice is and I would use the word invest, because this means not only financial investment, but time investment, care investment, to invest in people and communities first, because before you can do anything in the financial realm at the landscape level. If you forget about the people and forget about the soft skills, and that's what we start with, soft skills, to build a landscape partnership of many, many stakeholders, landowners, communities, farmers, mayors, political people. If you don't do that well and long-term build trust, you can't win this battle with the best business case of the world. You just cannot do it, because we will continue doing business as usual.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is the challenge. So because who's going to pay for that process? We started with philanthropist money, because governments are not there. They think short term. No, investments, they will come on board later, because they just, in general, with the exception of some good people, they wait and sit and scout for the best investment opportunities. So I think that is the critical angle, where we need to cover to close that Death Valley gap with soft skills at the landscape level, and bring in the right knowledge of ecology, finance, and business, whatever is needed to make it to kickstart it again. And here, the underlying thing is ecology. Yeah. It's not economics, it's not finance, it's ecology and people.
Exactly.
These two.
I think that's a really, really well said. Thank you. In fact, just yesterday in the Capitals Coalition Day of Collaboration, we were talking about how do you value collaboration, because part of the time it's not even recognized in all of these models of it will be easier, or it will appear that you'll get better returns if you go it alone fast and do your own thing, but at the end of the day it will come back to bite us. So I would like to let each of you have any reactions or additional comments from this exercise, from hearing each other, and then we're going to go out to the room for questions. So please, Christian.
So just building on what just said by Jan-Willem, in the end, there's no company or no organization who can do this alone. And in the end, what we are working towards is a fundamental system change of the current economy we are working in. And this is really the call that we need to collaborate as much as we can. So we shouldn't talk about each other all the time. We should talk with each other. And we should think about what is the USP of all of these different initiatives. And you see 4 totally different types of initiatives going on here, or business models, however you want to call this. We need to think what is the North Star we are all heading for. And this is driving this event as well. And where is the point where we need to go?
Thank you. Clapping. Yeah, we said we do lots of clapping. Thank you. Do you want to add?
I think talking together and working together with NGOs, farmers, people from universities, governments, that is very important, and trust is very important. And I believe that you can always show the gap, for example, to the farmer or to an NGO or to other stakeholders, down to earth and high in heaven. What is the gap? And how are we going to work together on that? That will also help.
Thanks. Thank you.
Now, very briefly, I think I would ask governments and pension funds and investors, as well as business, to put more money also in the facilitation process.
Thank you.
On my side, yeah, we speak a lot in these types of forum and conference about public policies and the need to mobilize more finance. And in between, I think that real economy actors, change agents, are the entrepreneurs, the companies that are implementing the solutions, and really they play a key role. And from a finance sector, what we need is to support the right ones and the ones that are making the right efforts and providing the right solutions. And I think a good example here.
Thank you. And we already heard that already so much is being done. So great. Over to the audience now. So you had Slido open with you can please put questions in. And otherwise, I'm just looking out to the audience. If there are any questions, points, please. Yes, I won't throw the. Do you want the planet? Okay. Try again.
I don't need the planet. I need the mic.
You need the planet. You don't need the mic. I love it.
For this process, it would be so helpful to have ambitious regulation, right? To have a level playing field for those businesses that are moving the right direction compared to those that are not. Mm-hmm. And in general, to give momentum to this process. However, whenever we propose environmental regulations that is ambitious, we face strong opposition. From where? Business associations, and ministries of the environment, of the economy. So my question, in particular to Christian, you have really heavyweight industry in your alliance. How are you using this weight to influence the political process in a positive way as to reduce the opposition to ambitious environmental regulation?
Thank you.
So it's good to have two hats now. And I'm now not talking as representative of BASF, because this is much more difficult to talk about regulation than as a CEO of such an alliance. I think what we need to be fully aware of is that also this alliance, even if we have strong industry and the power of the four auditing firms, I think this is really crucial, is that we need to reach out to regulators and to standard setters. Because the stuff what we are doing, yes, we are forward thinking, at least we think so that we are. And if we want to get this implemented, we just can't demonstrate that this is possible as the companies. But there is the question, how will the others follow us to change the system? And therefore you need to have incentive schemes. So this is the call on the financial market. Thanks for that one. Yes, first of all, the financial market. And secondly, you need also to incentivize the investors to move in this direction. And when you're at the political level, you're talking about regulation. And in the long run, if you think this through, at least this is the intention, what we are up for. We are talking about IFRS and US GAAP. Yeah? This can't be done in the next few months. This can't be done not in the next 2 to 3 years, but this is where we need to go for. And to move IFRS is a rather challenging topic, so where we need also the politicians to work with us. But I see it in the layers. First of all, you need to demonstrate, yes, it's possible, when the financial market should step in, when we need to have a regulation basis, hopefully globally, and when we need to talk about international standards.
Thank you. You had one point here in the front, Thomas, please.
Thank you. Real quick, first, I didn't vote because I think we need all 4 of you. And on the competition point, in game theory, there's something called co-opetition, and that's probably the compromise. We need you all to cooperate, and then you can compete at some point. Without competition, we may not get from the 1% to the 99%, because you all need to compete with the 99%. That's one thing. We had a very interesting panel here because we had all the steps in the process of transforming, in my view. We had analysis, we had a means through accounting to bring that to the attention of the decision makers. And once the decision makers understand the footprint they're faced with, they will at some point say, what can I do? And that's where we need the people with the solutions, finance, and people on the ground, and the combination. So that's an observation I wanted to share. I'm really optimistic, as usual, when I attend these meetings. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I think it's very easy to end up pointing fingers at other people and saying, oh, you should be doing this and you should be doing this, rather than asking ourselves what we can do. And also, how hard is it? Like, if you really imagine you had full control over what would or should be done, it's not that easy. And one of the things that, in particular, in my background, that has been really challenging to think about is, well, how do you invest your money in the things that will just helping companies do this, helping pension funds do this. It's not an easy task. And one of the questions that has come up on Slido is blended finance is a growing trend. How can we scale up and get the finance sector to be more forthcoming? So do you have anything to add on that, Gautier?
Blended finance is really so the mix of public and private finance, and according to which public money is taking a bit more risk than private money to attract this private money in these sectors. And to develop this, we need more public money and more private money. And so more public money means also working with the governments, with public funds like the Green Climate Funds or the EU Commission as well, with DEFCO, or in different instances, or local governments. And this requires also for private sector management companies or actors to be able to understand public policy, public goods, high-level environmental social standards, etc. On the other hand, you need to mobilize more private sector, so it also means that we need to demonstrate that there is a viable underlying business model, and this is where entrepreneurs are providing solutions, and that our role as financial actors is to understand better the risk, and often there is high risk perception, sometimes higher than what the reality is on the ground. And we lower the opportunities, whereas with experts, you can really see that there are great opportunities to create value for the people, for nature. And so to have more investors, we need to communicate more on those two sides, better connecting with public policies and on-board public sector, and better communicating on viability of the underlying business model. But the good sign is that more and more private investors are coming. There is really an important increase in the commitments made by them.
Thank you. I'm going to take two more questions. So there's one here, and anyone else already get the mic? No? Yeah, you've got one, and there's, one over there, please.
Okay, to be very concrete, there is an opportunity to link the initiatives and the very good examples from your private initiatives and the public sector. It's EU Sustainable Finance Initiative, and I'm questioning myself, why didn't we mention it up to now? Because, I mean, this is really where something is going on regulation and incentives for the whole financial sector, and this has really a strategic role for the whole economy. So, what do you think about it? Is it something going in the right direction? Not only on climate, and this is very, very important. We really have to cover all the other environmental targets, including biodiversity and ecosystems, but this is a very concrete process.
Thank you, and I'll take the last question. Yes, please. You put your hand up. No, you didn't want to? Okay. So if not, then I'll take this next one here. This is an interesting one. A good deal is being spoken about restoration. Let's not forget we have natural habitats out there. How do these approaches to natural areas before they're lost? How can we make sure we conserve as well as restore? So on those two questions, I'd like to invite each of you to comment, and then also any final wrap-up thoughts that you have, please. And while we do that, if you can go to the next Slido question, we want to hear also from you at the same time. There are a lot of other initiatives and business and finance examples out there. What are the ones that spring to mind that you think we should be capturing that already are underway? So either company names or initiatives, and let's just get this populated on this word cloud to show the scale of what's already taking place. But so the two questions on the EU initiative on finance and on conservation as well as restoration.
Shall I do the conservation one?
Sure, go ahead, please. This is good collaboration. You do conservation.
I'll do the conservation one. Let's say the conservation, if you look towards a holistic landscape or seascape approach, you need to embed the natural zone. I call that the conservation zone or the protected area zone. These zones are actually the critical mass to make sure that the whole landscape, ecological functionality continues doing the right thing. So business-wise, you have to look in carbon, you have to look in biodiversity offset mechanisms and all that, pollination, you name it. So there's a whole list that you can bring into the financial world and see that if you do it, the risk will go down for the whole setting of a landscape. It means more money for actual protection. That means people on the ground doing the thing, restore the natural system and clear invasives is needed. And the third thing is connectivity. Connect those places with ecological corridors. Of course, in some countries like Europe, there's legislation and Natura 2000 and so on, but people quite often don't understand what is the value, especially farmers, of a natural zone. So you need to make sure that this facilitation process works well on both sides, and that they can have a cash flow that at the end will be increased.
Thank you. Any final comments?
So, talking about the EU sustainable finance process, as a corporate, I would say yes, it's going directly in the right direction. The challenge you just lined out, we're currently talking just about greenhouse gases in the end, so we need to extend it throughout the whole natural capital agenda, but don't forget people in this world, so people should be an essential part of this as well. From the corporate point of view, it's a highly relevant political process. The question is, do we have so much time? If you see how long it takes to get, in the end, the metric done for greenhouse gases, and I know it's a really, really difficult process over there to get to this point. So this is one of the reasons why we also have set up this alliance to move quicker, to have or to provide something for the EU Commission from a totally business practitioner's point of view, and in the end to start the collaboration and discussion how we can move on, because we have for sure our own experiences and concerns looking at the political process, but we want to be really engaged with the EU Commission to get this done, because this is the way to go. The question what we have, is this fast enough in the political process? So shouldn't we move on our own? And what we would like to do is increase transparency about the value we create in a standardized model and to provide a first metric for discussion with the others.
Thank you, Christian. I have a lot of hope based on this session. There are so many amazing innovative solutions. There's this desire from everyone for collaboration. And now I have for you some good news and some bad news. The good news is it's nearly lunchtime. The bad news is apparently during the break, some people's belongings got stolen. So please give it back. No, please, can you take your valuables with you over lunch, okay? And don't leave anything in this room. We're now going to, we also wear your badge and take your ID card with you. Okay. You also, but back to the hope bit, sorry about that little bracket, but the hope bit is that there are so many initiatives already taking place, we're unifying and converging. After lunch, there are going to be 2 sets of breakout sessions. Again, the good news is they're all amazing. The bad news is you're going to have to choose one for each. They're each an hour and a quarter. So have a look at your agendas, have a look on the screen. All I would say is this, is that be on time, and also there's a coffee break in the middle. And also, if you don't know where to start on your natural capital journey, you should be going to the second one, Business Training on Natural Capital, which is being organized by the We Value Nature campaign and the wonderful Katja and Nadine. So it all sounds interesting, and that's because it is, so it's hard to choose. We will be back here at 5 o'clock for the wrap up, and we're going to be focusing on what are the concrete actions that have come out of these sessions. It's not a talking shop. If in these breakouts you feel that everyone's going off and chatting and going on, you say we're focused on the concrete actions we can bring back to the whole group. So thank you very much, enjoy your lunch, and see you back here at 5. Thank you.